Hello,
Hello.
hello.
How lovely to be back. How are you today, Jess?
I am as mellow as I can be. You?
Lovely. I'm extremely mellow as well. I'm in a good mood.
Oh, that's great because we're going to be doing CSS today, and CSS is like a little tiny bit harder than just HTML.
It's gonna be super fun. It's gonna be new. And I think most of these things you don't know them till you know 'em, you know?
Yeah.
It's gonna
If you could
be a
hear a
good
broop,
time.
broop, broop in the background, it's my worst cat who may decide to feature himself. So, and we're going to
Oh,
switch this up today. So we're still pair programming, but you get to
yep.
drive and I get to type. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the curriculum we're working
Amazing.
from. And this says I only did 17% yesterday. That's because you did some and I did some.
Yeah.
Um, and for learners, if you got a chance to finish all of it, amazing, stunning fit. If you still got some to go, it's okay. There's no deadlines. Nothing bad is going to happen. But
It's gonna
today,
be Yeah, it's gonna be super chill. Just before I get started, one thing I forgot to say. If you're watching this and you're like, "Hey, what's cool? What's going on?" Welcome. Jess and I are running this series of boot camps right now. We're doing the web development certification from Free Code Camp, and then in starting mid-February, we're gonna do the JavaScript one. And just a few links if you're interested. Um, got a code of conduct here. Please understand that by joining this bootcamp, you are agreeing to adhere to the code of conduct. We just want to make sure that everybody feels safe and included when working with us. And if you want to stay up to date, there's the badwebsite.club website where you can see the schedule. You can see we've got a calendar for y'all. So you can put it into your Google Calendar or whatever app you like and stay up to date on streams. There's also a Discord. Let me bring that up real quick. Oh, we got folks saying hello.
oh
Yeah.
gosh,
So if you go
hello,
to,
loves. Does that work?
yeah.
Does that link work?
Oh, hold on. Hold on. Maybe it doesn't.
sorry. That was a very,
Uh,
very aggressive way to be like, does it?
that is a great question. I need to update that, don't I? Give me one sec.
Not a problem. I'm going to mute myself and yell at a cat.
No. Yes. Here we go. So this is the link for Discord. You can join us there. You'll just
Everything's
need to,
fine.
yeah. Once you've read the rules and clicked on a green reaction, we can verify you and you'll get started. That's the link right there.
It's
The link
okay.
does
This
work.
new
Oh,
link will
thank you
work.
for confirming,
Oh, the link
Yellow.
does. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine.
All right, that's my yammering. I think we're good to go for doing a little CSS, which I'm
A
very excited
little
about.
CSS. So let's take a
Yeah,
look at what we're going to be doing.
yeah. So let's click on Start
Start the
Project there.
So the last time we had sort of like white text and a background. It was a little bit bland. This looks a lot more powerful.
Yeah. So
Now let me
here
drag
I
around.
mean, like a lot of what we're doing, we've seen before, with HTML for our content, but now we're going to do also the styles. And that's, applying things like
Yeah.
fonts, images, color, and that all comes from CSS.
I often say that HTML is like the furniture for your website.
Ooh,
It's the stuff that's on it. It's the content. Whereas CSS is like the rules of style, the flow you put onto your
I
website.
love that.
So we're going to go a little fast this time. And can you go ahead and describe what we're doing as I do them?
Yeah. So first we're going to do the essential structure of our web page. So first we need to have an HTML file where we're saying, hey, and we're going to recognize these tags that we've had before. We're going to say, hey, make sure that you understand, Mr. Browser, or that this is a HTML file. We're going to tell our website, our browser, that this HTML file is written in English. So we're going to use that HTML tag and then give it the attribute lang. And this attribute needs to have a value. So what Jess is going to do here is set that to be English, or EN for short. So that done, we've got the essential structure of our HTML done. All we got to do now is check our code.
Everything's fine.
It
And we're
works.
faster and faster through this, what you sometimes
Yeah.
hear boilerplate code each time.
Yeah. because and it's called boilerplate because a lot of this is repeated across most websites. So for example, just about every website is going to have a head element. And in this head element, we're going to have stuff like our title. And this title is what's shown at the very top of your browser, the window. It says there, for example, here it says StreamYard for me because I'm streaming, but for y'all, it's probably going to have YouTube or Twitch. But for this website, we don't see it yet because remember, this is what goes at the top of the window. This is the title that shows up in your browser, which is called Cafe Menu.
So we don't
hello,
see anything
everybody.
changed
Thank
in
you
our
for joining.
preview, but
Yeah.
if somebody visits our page, they'll see that title.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh, so we've got somebody saying it's a little blurry. I'm not seeing that on my side, but if other people are, please fuss at us. So
Yeah, I think what you might want to do, if possible, might be to make sure that if you're watching on a phone or something, to make sure that the quality is set at
ooh.
a higher thing. Cool. So we've got our title done. Then we're gonna set our our character set. And this is, I don't think we talked about this last week, but what this meta does, and this meta stands for, outside of the content, is telling the browser like what kind of characters or letters can we use here. So for example, this UTF-8, correct me if I'm wrong, Jess, should cover pretty much all kinds of characters.
Okay, so I was gonna. So I'm the language dork of the boot
Ooh,
camp, and I was gonna
I
fuss you
love
out where you were
someone.
like, it covers pretty much it. But many modern languages characters are covered by this character set, this character encoding of UTF-8.
I know an example. For example, one of the more common ones is ASCII or American something's character something something, like an American one. And you see this O with an accent in my name? That
Um,
always gets messed up by a lot of these character sets. So you might see like errors. Like I always get like a Swedish A, with a little circle on top and a backwards E when trying to display that O. And that's where these encodings come from. That was a very short detour. I'm sorry.
Not everything's easy. I'm gonna check our code, and this is fine as well. We got that
Amazing.
green stripe. I'm just gonna, and this is just saying, hey, if you've got some extra cash, donating to Free Code Camp is a cool thing to do. It's not necessary to continue the boot camp, but,
Mm.
and I'm just fighting with my cat as we
Oh,
stream.
what a sweetheart.
What? No. And when at the end of this boot camp, we'll go ahead and just raffle one of these cats off. So we're gonna create a body element under.
Real quick,
Bro,
Jess,
you
on
can't
line
step on
3.
the.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
S
On line
bro,
3.
meaning my cat. So he's on the keyboard. Very professional.
All
So
fine.
under the head, it says to make a body.
One more, Jess. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
At the end of line 3, there's a backtick.
yes.
Yeah.
We've all
Nice.
learned valuable lessons about what kinds of pets work best with web development.
Cool. So we're adding a body element now, which you'll recognize from from yesterday, is where all of the main content of our website will go. So we can go ahead and check that. Good to go. Great work. Now we're going to add some of the content that we'll recognize from yesterday. So we'll start with a main element, and we're going to go ahead and close that as well. Now remember, this is not conducive to any content itself, but to for the structure of our website.
All right. So I feel like that probably works as well.
Amazing. Remember, the
I am
indentation doesn't
terribly
matter. It's more
sorry
for
about the
us.
cats. It's very unprofessional.
Oh, check it out. People are excited about winning a cat, Jess.
Mm, it's
So
not a prize,
now,
it's a punishment. And I'm
so now
not
we're going to
actually
add
gonna
that.
give away my cat.
Oh, so we're going to be adding our heading, which is going to be Camper Cafe, and that's in all capital letters.
I bet there's gonna be weird ways we can change that using CSS later on.
Oh, totally.
Um,
So we can go ahead and check our code. And this is stuff we've done yesterday. So we're just going to like rush through it. As always, if you want to ask questions, feel free to. We'll also dedicate some time to some Q&A. So below that, we're going to add a paragraph element. Jess, can I ask you a side question?
mm,
EST stands for estimated, right?
I think this would be established.
Established.
English is
That makes
weird,
sense.
right? No, it's fine. Estimated 20. We probably started around 2020. Starting a cafe in 2020 seems wild.
Cool. So that looks great. Uh,
Okay.
so we have 2 sections for our menu.
Inside our main. We can do this. Okay,
So
it doesn't say where to put these though.
hello from Buenos Aires. Hello.
I've
Addison,
never
within the
had a
mail is
bad time in Buenos Aires. Can you imagine getting to live there all the time?
I've never well, no, I've been at the airport flying to and from Chile, but that's it.
And to be fair, the
Uh,
last time I went was a long, long time ago. It's the
oh, Jess, I think we just want 1.
add a section element. Oh, just one.
Yeah,
Hmm.
fair point. Go for it.
Add a section
Oh, we
element
got a
within the
question
main
from
element.
I'm gonna answer a question real quick in the meantime.
Yeah.
So what do you mean for self-closing tags like the meta tag as regards to the forward slash before the closing? And I think this forward slash, I believe I learned this last time I taught this boot camp, is that it's not actually used in HTML, but more in the React context. I could be wrong.
Oh, so I think what's being asked here is, hey,
Yeah.
you can't for a self-closing tag, you can either leave so the browser will read it correctly if you add the
Oh,
slash at the end or if you leave the slash off. And this is asking what we
right.
recommend.
My
It's
bad. I
added it
misunderstood.
here, and I think adding it here suggests that it's probably best practices.
My bad. Thank you, Jess.
No,
As always, much more knowledgeable than me. Um, So let's go ahead and check our. Oh, you already checked our code. It
yeah,
looks
let's check
good.
our code. We've got it only wanted one section. And this might be a good time to talk about fault tolerance in HTML. And
Ooh,
while you do that, I'm going to add an H2 just because we've done this before
great. Yeah.
and
So
it
the
won't
thing
be
about
too
HTML
scary.
is that HTML is that it's strict ish. So um, you can make, for example, at the beginning of HTML, that HTML was written in all capital letters. Nowadays, you can write it in a combination. I would encourage you not to, but the browser's not going to get upset if you do. Also, if you forget to, for example, close some tags, it might mess some stuff up, but the browser will still try and display it.
And the difference between the stuff that's technically perfectly correct and the stuff that works is a concept we'll hear a lot called best practices.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure if that. So Mitch is saying, you know what? Your browser ignores this closing, and that may be what I'm going to be lazy and not look this up because this mirrors what I'd like it to be, and I'm going to go with the answer I want. So we're going to do the
Yeah.
hard stuff. So I'm going to let you explain the hard stuff while I just type it.
Okay, so now we're going to start dipping into CSS. And in order to do that, in our head element, we're going to add this new tag called style. And I think we'll want to close it as well.
And I'm going to go ahead and say this now because the way we're teaching you to do this right now isn't going to be the way you do it day to day. This is putting our CSS in our HTML file, which is
Yeah.
pretty old fashioned.
Yeah.
So this is just teaching us in the same way. In a minute, we're going to split off and have our HTML and CSS separate. So, but for right now, we're just showing you how they feel together. It's technically
Yeah.
possible, but it's not really best practices to do it this way. So we've got nothing inside our style tag now. Nothing's happening here. No content.
Fantastic. So now we're going to write our first bit of CSS. And this is going to look different from from HTML in that it has a different syntax. That is a different way of writing it. So what we do in CSS is we tell it, hey, for a given element, which you see here in this example, apply these properties. So in our exercise, what we're going to do is add a new line between 6 and 7.
Add a new line between 6 and 7. And I'd
Perfect. So
also
we're going
point
to
out that so our element, this is our HTML element we're using, and you said H1?
That's right. So we're going to target our H1 and then using curly brackets. So everything inside those curly brackets will be applied to that H1. So the one we're going to apply here is the text-align property. And to give it a value, we'll use a colon, and then we'll say center. Now there's a couple of things to bear in mind here. Property name, colon, value, and then a semicolon at the end. So we can see already that our H1 is centered. Do we want to play around with it and see if we,
Yeah.
like, what else is possible? Do you want to try, say, right?
Hang on, I'm just copying over this.
Yeah, totally.
So we're gonna change this to right and see what it does, because it did indeed jump to the center.
See? And by default, that should be left. No, I don't think you can align it
didn't
to the
work.
bottom,
Left.
but I believe
So
left
the
shouldn't
default
change
is
anything.
left, so left doesn't change it. That's actually a really good point. That it's going to strictly enforce American spelling almost all of the time.
Right,
Fabulous.
yes.
So, Steve, I see a really good question. I'm just going to save this towards the end because this is a really good question.
Yep.
I don't want to break my flow. So, remember that if you're seeing a bunch of pointy babies being a deeply technical term, you're probably in your HTML. If you're seeing some of these
Yeah,
curly babies, you're probably looking at CSS. It's not
that's a
always
great way.
true, but
Shall we check our code?
yeah.
Cool. So
So,
we've written our first set of CSS.
and it's inside our style tags. Okay. Even though that's not going to be how we usually write it. So we used a type selector. Here I said, for my CSS, get me everything that has an H1 type, this type of element.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
now we're going to do it for H2 and P elements.
I can
So
think of
let's
two
start with
different ways to do
H2.
this.
Yeah, let's go with the way that I would do this starting out. So let's add a new line and add a new CSS declaration. So H2, use our curly friends, and center. So text align colon center.
Why do I need the semicolon on the end?
What we need the semicolon at the end to tell CSS like, hey, we're done with this declaration.
Oh, so that's like I've finished giving you the rules.
Exactly. Well, this one rule.
So
it's for one rule at a time. Cool.
Haha. But there's a different way we could do this. Let's check.
And
We got our green stripe.
Yeah.
What's the
Nice.
lazy way to do this?
So what you can do also is use a comma.
Oh, I need a comma here.
To
We didn't need it
separate-
with HTML.
Yeah. So
But
for HTML, and if you delete lines 10 through 15, yeah, does the same thing.
wait,
it accepts it as well. Nice.
it does. So I should have trusted that they would teach us this next time. So
There we go.
delete all of our text selectors and do this the lazy way. So we want this all to be centered. So I say, hey, my H1. And you could put these in any order. I just put them in the order
That's
from
correct.
big to little to keep me reasonable.
There's no best practice here.
There could be.
True.
Okay. This is the hard thing. So now your studying has gotten infinitely more complex.
Yeah. So check it out. At the top, we have those two files there, index.html and styles.css. So what we're going to be doing from here on out is writing our CSS in this styles.css file, and we'll come back and link it to our HTML. But for now, we're just going to focus on writing our CSS in that CSS file.
And I know
So we've
that
got a
this
new
is
file.
super busy, but we've got 3 different tabs with our HTML here, our CSS in the middle.
And
And
our
this is telling
preview.
me to go and get all of the stuff out of my style tags and copy it over,
Indeed.
but not. So I'm going to cut that. And we saw everything jump back to the default to the left. I'm going to paste it here in my CSS file, and nothing
Oh,
happened.
hold on. Nothing happened. That's because we've written this CSS, but it's not being taken into account in our HTML yet. And we're going to be doing that pretty soon. So let's go ahead and check our code.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
sorry.
we've set our rules of style, but we haven't told our HTML what we want to do with it.
Exactly. It doesn't know to magically bring it in. We need to bring it in ourselves. Oh,
So
see,
let's
we can go ahead and remove
delete
that style
this.
element.
Shift it to the left.
Yep,
And it's shifted to
totally
the left
fine.
even though we have our rules here in the CSS. Okay.
Yeah,
It feels wrong, but it's not wrong.
it's going to be right in just a minute. So let's check our code. Looks good. So now we're going to link that file. So we're going to
All
create
right.
this is a self-closing element called link. So we don't need to close it. And we're going to, it goes in our head element, and it's going to have an attribute called rel. This rel will tell it how it relates to our HTML. And then the ref, you remember the ref, is going to be the name of the file.
I'm going to cut this. I'm going to take this away.
Yeah.
And really, when I add this again, when I paste it back, we're going to see the rules being applied. And this is because our HTML now can read the rules on the other sheet.
Yeah, exactly. So the browser is going to fetch it and saying, oh, cool, I have this now. I'm going to go ahead and apply it.
Everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine.
And this is like the reason to do this is mostly so that you can keep your HTML in one place and your CSS in another. It's more convenience for us. They're like, as far as the browser is concerned, it's just like, oh, cool, I'll read this stuff.
Okay. Oh, this is not so bad. Everything's fine.
Yeah, we did it.
So we've done this.
So what comes next?
Oh, can I admit something to you? Well, to you and to everybody else on the internet right now. It's not a very, very secret, is it? I always have to look this up. Oh, Tenzik's got a really good question. I'm going to get to this in just one second. So this meta name viewport content with device with initial scale 1.0, I always forget this if I'm in a hurry, but I'm going to copy and paste it here. And then we're going to talk about what this, oh, wait. Oh, heck. Where'd that go? Did I just, I
I think
copied
you
the
copy
whole
pasted
thing.
all good.
In
No
that case,
stress.
I'll type it out just so you can talk about it while I'm typing.
Yeah, so we're going to be adding this new meta element. The name is viewport, and the content, and this is a little bit odd at first. What we're essentially doing here is telling the browser, hey, if you're looking at this on a phone, please scale it down so it looks nice on a phone as opposed to being like super blown out.
Oop.
Of course, in the future, we're going to have specific CSS that we're going to write for mobile devices for smaller screens. And this is called responsive CSS. But for now, we're just telling the HTML like, hey, please play nice on a phone.
And so I may have a typo here, but what this says is, so we've got 2 meta tags. It's okay. You can have more than one meta tag doing different things. It won't hurt anything. This is saying, hey, I want to set a rule for the viewport. And the viewport is the browser or the window you're looking at the website in. And here
Yeah,
I'm saying, I want the content to be equal to, I want you to stretch the content out so that it fits. And here I say, I want the width of the content to be the same as the width of the viewport, the width of the window.
exactly.
But I want to keep the scale to 1.0. So go ahead and use all the width you have, but keep it 1.0. Don't warp.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha.
Ooh.
I'm going to copy and
Let's take
paste
a
it
look.
because I bet there's a typo. I've been me a
Oh,
long
I found
time.
it. It's
Oh, God.
initial.
Oh, is it?
Do you still have it there?
Yeah. Why am I bad at copying and pasting today?
Oh, it's kind of refusing to copy.
Reset this lesson. All right.
Weird.
Everything's fine.
Meta. And, you know, this is like this is what I would call some of that boilerplate we were talking about earlier. So width equals device dash width. And this is something that I would encourage folks to copy paste, definitely.
Right. I get the first couple of times. It's good to do it.
Yeah.
INITIA. Where am I? Who am I?
Mm-hmm. 1.0. And then do the closing bit.
Hey, everything's fine.
Nice. Well done.
We're just so I had a quick question. So Tenzing was asking back when we put this in, we put our link here. We don't need a. So this ref we have in our link, which I've highlighted here, doesn't have an A for an anchor.
Yeah.
And this is because this is a link. It's going and getting us a relationship with this content. It's not sending the user someplace.
Yeah.
So this is a really good question. You can have a ref for links. You could have them for a link element. You could have them for anchor tags. And to make it more complicated, we call them links on the web. So I definitely get why you'd be confused about this. It is confusing. So we don't need an anchor
It's a
tag.
bit weird at first, but yeah, the link element is for getting that kind of file, and the A is for making a link.
So
Oh, okay. We're going to be applying a new property. So, our body is going to have, we're going to apply the background dash color property to have the brown color. Now,
oh, I don't love it.
link versus well put,
Oh,
Starlight. Link versus hyperlink.
Starlight, absolute teacher's pet is saying, hey, the A tag is for a link versus hyperlink and hyperlink just sounds very cool, very 90s, very neo-futurist.
So I have a question, Jess. I see that we did H1, H2, and P, and then we did body. Does the order matter if I put the body declaration before the H1, H2, and P1?
So the order does matter for CSS, but it matters in a specific way. So here, if I cut this because I'm lazy, and I paste it up here, it's going to do the same thing. The order for CSS matters because it's cascading, which sounds so beautiful. So what CSS does, and really what HTML does as well, is it's going to start at the top of your CSS file and read it down, and it's going to set these rules in from the top to the bottom. So what I'd ask is, what would happen if I set the body background color up and then I set it again at the bottom?
Let's find out.
Because the three things we can do when we don't know something are we can ask somebody who might.
Yep.
And unfortunately for y'all, the people you can most easily ask are us, and I'm a big old goofball.
So that's interesting. So it's applying brown first, and then it's applying pink. Also, I noticed you went with background as opposed to background color. So these are two valid CSS properties. No, it's great because this question might come up. So these are two valid CSS properties, but the background one can also be expanded to use, say, images, which I bet we'll get into. So,
but why is it pink? We've already said to make it brown. And the challenge here is because it reads it from the top bottom. It made it brown, but so fast we couldn't really see it. And then it turned it pink right away. So it looked through, here's the rules of style for this website. It's brown. No, it's pink.
Exactly.
I'm going to take this away.
Let's go ahead and check our code.
And sometimes you can wind up with mistakes in CSS because you said something early on that clashes with something you say later. This makes a good point. We don't love this brown.
Yeah, so this is called a color contrast issue, which when you start looking into accessibility later on in this bootcamp is going to be an issue because like when I'm sleepy in the morning, I find it hard to read. I mean, I shouldn't be looking at my phone first thing in the morning, but still, like I find it hard to read like that black on brown text. But like this with this burly wood color, which I always forget is a color, it becomes a lot easier to read.
Yeah. So what we're using now is we're using color keywords, but we're going to learn 3 other ways to set colors in CSS.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Cool.
worked.
Fantastic.
What is a
Nice.
div?
Cool. A div is a box.
Is it
So
semantically? So I've been saying we need to pick the one that has the most semantic meaning. Does it have more or less semantic meaning? Does it carry more or less meaning than an article?
mhm, a div carries significantly less meaning. It is just a container. I have a question that I always forget. What does it stand for again? Div? Is it division or divisor? I always forget.
Div starts for div.
Div.
Um,
What is div short
coming
for? I
over for
always forget.
NDN.
Division.
Content division element. Haha. I definitely knew that and didn't look it up. I looked it up.
I talk about it all the time and I always forget.
So a div is like the least semantic information you could have in a box. It's like, hey, make me a box to put things in.
Yeah,
So it
exactly. So it's
says
gonna
inside our
let's what are we gonna
body.
do here?
Ah, ha, ha,
So
ha,
we're gonna
ha.
so we're gonna put a div inside the body and then move all other elements inside the new div. So the way I would do this is make a new line between 9 and 10.
Yeah, yeah. And why are we doing this instead of putting the div in first and then moving everything?
Uh I don't know. I think for me this just feels the easiest way to do it, to sort of like encapsulate to nest everything inside there. So the indentation's a little bit wonky now, but if we right click and go on format document, look at
And we
that.
can easily see what's nested inside, who's the parent element and who's
Exactly.
the children element. I
So
I
this
I do
div
it like
has
this because I'm lazy.
extremely fair. Like
Oh,
one more
what's
thing
the
we
name?
have to do though, we
Ah,
need
ah,
to give
ah.
it an ID attribute. So ID, this is an attribute and we're going to give it the value of menu.
So we'll learn more about IDs and classes soon, but an ID is unique. I think about an
Yeah.
ID as like a name tag at a party. It's a weird party with name
Ooh, I
tags.
love that.
But if you see a name tag, you'd be like, ah, hey, that's Stuart. There's only one Stuart at this party. I know that guy. Whereas a
Yeah.
class is like a club where you set a bunch of rules or one rule. Everybody in the club follows the same rules. Or to make this a much easier simile, a class is like a classroom of students. Everybody in that class has the same rules of style, maybe the same uniform. Whereas an ID, we're talking about many different individuals. We're going to use IDs when we need to set rules for just you, you special little menu. Ah, that works just fine.
Perfect. So now
What's
we're
this?
going to
Oh
do some
no.
CSS, but it's going to look a little bit different. So now instead of targeting a specific element, we're going to use this, and this is called a selector, right? So we've been using selectors like body. Another selector we've used here is H1, H2, and P. We're going to use a selector to target an element that has an ID, right? And this is where the hashtag symbol comes in.
Why? What's the difference? Why do I sometimes want to set it to an element and why do I sometimes want to set it to an ID? I've only got one H1 here.
Yeah.
It did the same thing.
And so, and you definitely should want to have just one H1.
Oh, yeah,
However,
of course.
you're but probably you're going to want to have several H2s that look different. You're probably going to want to have several divs that look different. So even though we're not saying that this is for a div specifically, we're saying, hey, if there is a div that has this ID, apply this style to it. If there is an H2 that has that had if there's an H2 that has this ID, for example, give it this color.
Okay,
In
so
this
this is
case, we're
saying
saying,
even if I had 5 divs here and different stuff
yeah,
in all of them, this one would
yeah,
only change the menu div.
exactly. Now you're
So I'm
probably
going to
wondering,
continue to be mean. Oh, I was going to say, please, please, my love. I already said to center these. And
yeah,
then when I change the width of the div with the ID of
yeah,
menu, it's not centered anymore. So,
it's kind of floating, isn't it? So what we've done is we've told the menu to be 300 pixels wide. And a pixel is like, the dots on your screen, right? So you've got like, you can kind of guesstimate by looking at this that it's 300 pixels wide. But it doesn't look aligned anymore, and that's because sorry, it doesn't look centered anymore. But if you look at it real quick and like try to estimate in your head, you can see like, well, this is 300 pixels wide, so I guess it's kind of centered. You know what I would do to verify this, Jess? Let's give the menu a background color. We'll give it like white or something.
Yeah.
That way, I call this color debugging, and I do it all the time.
Oh, what's that special purple color?
Magenta?
Oh no, there's a CSS color named after a young lady.
What? And you said it's purple?
Yeah. Oh, it's a little sad.
Rebecca purple?
Rebecca purple.
It's on MDN. I'm gonna link it here.
Yeah. Is there a
Mark
dash?
has a question for us. No, one word. Mark, I see your question about IDs and classes. We're gonna come back to that, so stick around, please. So cool. Now you can see, right, that the camper like the menu itself is 300 pixels wide, and the text in there is centered inside there. So the menu isn't
Okay.
centered, but the text inside the menu is centered.
This brings me to one of my favorite points about HTML, which is indirectly also a point about CSS. Every single element, every single HTML element, every single element is a rectangle. And
True.
I love talking about this with new learners because people don't believe me when they say, "Oh no, because this is a circle." Actually, I said, "No, the
Nope.
circle is a rectangle." Um, and y'all are saying like, that old lady, she's not right. I don't know what she's talking about." But stick with me, stick with us. Like, Ramon, back me up. Everything's a rectangle. All the HTML, like
Everything is a
every
rectangle.
elements, even if it's a rectangle with no size, it's
Mm-hmm.
still a
It's just a
conceptual rectangle.
it's just a tiny rectangle.
So I'm going to get rid of Rebecca. I like Rebecca Purple as an example as well because we often think about programming languages and programming being absent and removed from human culture. And there
Yeah,
are standards and there are boards who govern how we design things and develop programming. But like these are made by people. These are human things.
totally.
Remind me why we'd use a
Ooh.
comment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're
Cool.
bringing comments back now, and in CSS they look a little bit different. So in HTML we had that syntax with the bigger than and smaller than, and uh, the exclamation mark.
The
Here we're
Pac-Man
using these
babies.
the Pac-Man babies. Here we're using this /* and then */ to end the comment. And this is really for us as developers to leave our self notes, to leave future versions of our self notes, to explain what we're going to be leaving for other teammates, and just to like add a little bit more context. Or if I need to like quickly test something, I could just remove a line instead of deleting it and then losing it in the undos. I could just comment it out.
So where I put in Rebecca Purple, I could have just taken that away with comments, but I didn't.
Exactly.
Check our
So
code.
now we've done it here to make the background white again. Fantastic.
And we're gonna keep going until we hit about because like you're the nice teacher. You would do every single lesson with the students abuse. I'm the mean teacher, and I'm gonna say we're gonna stop at right around number 49, just so folks do the second half on their own. And then maybe tomorrow when we come in, we might skip or go really fast through some of the HTML ones. Starlight's got my back and saying, "Hey, do you know what? There's an implied believe what Jess says. Later, we're going to learn in CSS how we can take our rectangles and squeeze them into circles, which are still rectangles."
Ooh. Yeah. So now we're going to use this selector to set the background of the div element to Burleywood. So background color. And remember, it applies to this div itself, but it's only the one that has the ID menu. And there you
Okay.
can see.
So what's going on here is that the content, the text inside this div is centered within the div, but the
Yep,
div is aligned to the left by default.
exactly.
Oh, we've got a green stripe. None of this can hurt us. It's just computers.
Ooh, so
Ooh.
now it's easy to see that. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to change the width to be 80%. And you might be wondering, okay, but 80% of what? It's going to be 80% of the width of the element that contains that div. And if we go back to the HTML real quick, can you do that for me,
Yeah,
Jess, please?
let's do that. I'm gonna goodbye,
So
CSS.
on line so on line 10, we can see that the div is inside the body. So the div is always going to be 80% as wide as the body that contains it. And how do we know how big the body is? Well, it's as big as what we can see, because that's the whole content. In fact, if just, yeah, exactly, we can see it's always going to be 80% as wide as the element that contains it.
Cool. I mean,
So this is
weird,
a
and it'll make
relative
more
width.
sense with time.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we've got two different types of measurements. We've got absolute measurements where a pixel is a pixel
Pixels.
is a pixel. And then
Yeah.
we've got relative CSS measurements like a percentage of the parent. I bet we're going to see some more
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely. And the great thing about these relative ones is that then they become a lot more friendly to, for example, when you have two windows side by side, or say if you have like a very small device, say you're looking at like, gosh, I don't know, a very small phone, or you know how some people have like browsers on their refrigerators?
What? No, no. I mean, I believe you, but I reject this on an emotional level.
Ooh,
So
okay.
I
So what we've
cheated and
done
jumped ahead. I'm going to grab some water. You explain what this is doing. I'm lazy.
Absolutely. So what we've done here is use the margin left and margin right CSS properties to say, cool, can you please make them automatic? That is, make the left margin automatic, make the right margin automatic. And now if you see here, it is the menu is now centered. Could you do me a favor, Jess, please, and resize the preview? So check it out. It's always going to be 80%, and it's always going to be centered inside the body.
All right.
Shall we check our
Thank
oh
you
no, we
very
already
much.
got the green string.
Pair programming this is so easy. It's so relaxing.
It's so chill.
Oh, do you know what?
Here we
People
go.
can do this with other learners. Like if you want to pair program and try and explain to each other what's going on, obviously code of conduct follows. You have to be nice to each other and not be
Please.
weird. I mean, you could be weird in appropriate ways. Um, ooh, Valentina's like, oh, rem and m are also going to be relative measurements. We'll
Ooh.
definitely learn about them. They're wild. It's going to be an absolute trip. So
So Mark,
classes.
here comes the answer to your question from before. Now we're going to be using a class selector. We haven't declared any classes in our HTML yet, but what we're going to be doing is target any elements that have the class menu. So not the ID, which is with the hashtag, but the class, which is the full stop. So now we're saying, hey, target all elements that have the class menu, not the ID. Now, we don't have any elements with the class menu.
So it
So
won't
what's going to
work.
happen is that this div, which remember has the ID menu, not the class, is no longer going to have these styles applied to it.
So I'm just going to make a note,
Oh,
and I'm
great.
going to make a
That's what
note
comments
for
are for.
yeah. So an element needs no introduction.
An element means
So
yes.
if you're writing some rules for CSS for an element, you don't have to put anything in front of it. It doesn't need an introduction.
Hmm.
And sometimes in English we call this a full stop.
Yeah.
So a class, you need to stop and check if you're in the right class. And a ID is
Mhm.
special. You've got to check and see if you've got the special ID. It's like checking your ID card. So like, hey, show me the hash to check your ID.
Perfect. And only one element should have that ID.
Amazing. Oh, we've got Marcy giving us a similar one. Ah, class could be like a
Ooh.
sports team, whereas the ID. Ooh, I love it. So a class is the whole team. We could set rules for the whole team. Whereas the
Yeah.
ID could be like the number on your jersey. So everybody, make sure you wear your cleats today. Number 27, make sure you wear both of your cleats because you've had a problem with that.
Love it. Thank you.
Amazing.
Shall we check our
So,
code?
yeah. And this works even though we've got some extra comments in here. I bet they'll go
Yeah.
away when we hit the next one, but it won't hurt us.
Ooh.
Uh,
So now we're going to apply, or we're going to declare an element with that class. We're going to replace the ID attribute with class.
And what happened here is before we were setting rules for the menu class, and there was no
Yeah.
one in the menu class. So we were sort of yelling those rules at nobody. And we've come back to this div and said, actually, you're in the menu class now. You have to follow those rules.
Mhm.
Everything's fine.
Lovely.
This is
What do
going
we
to be
do next?
so cool. This is going to be so hard. This is going to be so weird. While
Oh,
I
this
do
should
this,
be
can you talk about what hot linking is and why it's can you talk about what hot linking is and ask the learners why it's a bad idea? Or is this an
I don't
old-fashioned do
I've
you not
heard
know
it,
about
but
hot
it's been a
linking?
while.
So
No,
if
I've
I
heard it, but I
went
forgot.
to your website and I
Oh,
copied the
yeah.
URL of a picture
Yeah.
I like off your website, and then I used it to like I just copied the URL onto my
Mhm.
background. Why might it, and this is a question for the learners, not for you. If I went to Ramon's website and found a picture I like, and I
Yeah.
copied the URL from that picture to use as my background, why could that be a bad idea? What could be a what
Ooh.
could yeah. I'm gonna wait because I was see and Starlight, you always have good answers. It's cheating if I put you up first. So there's a couple different things. There's a couple of reasons I shouldn't do that. What are the reasons I shouldn't do that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna change this to a
I think I
background
have an answer,
image.
but I'll let y'all in the chat beat me to it.
And I'm gonna set it to this.
Ooh, somebody, Chris and Huber say copyright.
Oh, copy that
That
it's
is
stealing. It's
extremely
not
loud.
yours.
Yeah.
So
Ooh,
copyright's a good
we got a
one.
ooh.
Kai.
Uh, I might update my website and you could lose your link. Yeah, the
And
image
Kai's
could
got the
be
same one.
taken down.
I love
Yeah,
how sweet and innocent our learners are because they were like, Ramon could update his website and change the URL of that so that it doesn't appear anymore. But Ramon could also change. You could change your website and put up a rude picture instead in the same URL.
I
I
would
mean, you
never.
wouldn't. So it's stealing.
But
It's not
it is a
cool.
danger. Yeah.
People could change what the image is and you could get in trouble, or people
Yeah.
could delete it. Also, it's just a jerk thing to do. Like
So now you've set the
bot
background
challenge.
image of our menu. Amazing. Oh,
So
it
we're gonna
says
add an
arts add some
article.
items. Yep.
And remember, an article, it does the same thing as a div in that I can't type and look. In that it's a section. I made a section, it's a section.
Mm,
In that it's a container for content, but an article tells us more. I say, oh, this is going to tell us that there's an article coming instead of here's a div, an empty box that could have anything. So, empty box for an article. Ooh, promote. I see a really good question. We'll take a look at that later. Oh, and Kai is saying, oh, so our best practice would be having local. And local here, local usually means on your computer that you're working from. Here,
yeah.
local would mean in the same folder as your website in your hosting online. And I think that's true. It doesn't have to be in the exact same folder, but you should control all of the
Yeah.
images you put on your website. I think, and I love how quickly I said, here's a term called best practice. And everybody's like, is it a best practice too? I'll be like, I think it is.
The thing about best practices is that they're also changing all the time. Like what a lot of people will do now is put those images in a dedicated place so that it's closer to where people are connecting from. Say I've got my website, right? And it's here in Vienna, and somebody from Australia wants to connect to my website and download pictures. What would be ideal for me to do is have a special, let's say, place in the Oceania region so that you can get those images quicker than you would all the way from here, because that light still has to travel. And this is called a CDN, or a content distribution network. This is not going to be covered in this bootcamp, but for example, my website right now, the images are just there.
Yeah. So I've got two P elements with the designated text inside them. Oh, and do you know
Great.
what? This is asking me for,
So
I want
we're going to be
another
adding,
article.
we want 4 articles.
I want 4 articles. Each article has 2 P elements inside it. And the 2 P elements are, okay, I am woefully lazy. I'm proudly lazy.
Ooh, are you going to copy paste? I
I
would do
am
that too.
absolutely going to copy paste. And I'm going to copy paste the whole thing, even though, technically speaking, this is one of the things where I'm going to copy and paste it for brevity, for going quick. But copying this out, like typing it out, is a really good way to get this into your muscle memory. But I refuse to learn anything ever. I'm very stubborn. So for learning, it's really good to type it out. But because I'm stubborn and rubbish, I haven't. I've added these extra spaces just so I can keep this straight in my head. I've got a caramel macchiato. I'd like to have a caramel macchiato.
I wouldn't
We see
mind
as soon
one.
as we add the content into this P tag, it shows up because it's text. Gonna get a pumpkin spice. I know a lot of people are coffee purists. Oh no, that's not proper coffee. I'd love for there to be more seasonal fancy coffees. Hazelnut. Like, what would a January seasonal coffee look like? It tastes like depression and being a little bit broke. I'm going to grab a mocha for $4.50. I don't know what kind of currency these folks are using, but a mocha for $4.50 where I'm based seems a little bit. $4.50 for a mocha. I'm not sure I've got all this right, but let's check our oh, and you could back me up on this. Sometimes when you don't expect it to work and it works, right? It's good, right?
It's the best feeling.
Ooh, okay. So we're going to be putting these in classes. So the flavors are all going to get the flavor class. Okay.
Ooh, okay. So the French vanilla P element here is going to have the class flavor.
And I'm copying this because I bet all the rest of them are going to get flavored too.
Ooh, good point. Cool.
Oh.
Oh,
So
okay. So
if it
how
was
do
an
we do this?
element, we wouldn't have to put anything in front of it. It was an
Yep.
ID, it would have the hash. Stop
So for
and check if it's in the
a
class.
full stop for a class. Yeah. So all elements, these could be any kind of element that have the flavor class, are going to be text aligned to the left.
Okay, but the other
Perfect.
flavors didn't hop to the left.
And this is exactly why we use classes. So we can target one or more elements that we want to do this specific thing to. So we should be able to check our code. It looks good.
Oh, and now we're going to have a class for
Ooh.
price.
So now we're going to want to right align it. So first we're going to add that class price to our 3 monies. And then here will be text align. Perfect.
Still feels a little janky.
I mean, we'll make it better. Oh,
so I'm going to check our code.
What's
Everything's
Oh,
fine.
great. Fantastic.
And
so
you might notice that we're getting a lot of these right. We're getting a lot of these right because we've taught this we've done these exact same lessons year after year after year. If you get stuck on something, you're like, oh, but they just did it. We just did it because we've done it again and again and again. We're cheating. We're always cheating.
yeah.
Oh, but the class. I jumped the gun last time.
Oh, we're doing this because we're supposed to do it in this lesson.
Yeah.
Great.
We've only got a
Wonderful.
couple left, and then we're gonna abandon our learners. We're gonna be so mean. Okay.
I believe we were stopping at 49.
Oh, 49. Oh, we've got ages. So we talked really briefly about block and inline elements last time.
Oh, yeah.
So HTML elements are all rectangles, whether or not you believe me yet. And some of the rectangles you can stack next to each other on the same line. And these are inline elements. And some of these are big chunky blocks and they want to be on their own line by default. So a P element is a block. And
45-ish.
when you see new elements, you're like, are you block? Are you inline? You can go ahead and look them up. Just remember that an inline element, you can stack a bunch of these rectangles in a line on the same line. And a block one, boom, it likes to have the whole block to itself. It's selfish.
Okay, so what we're going to be doing
Ah,
here for our article, yeah. So our article is going to have this class attribute set to item.
hmm.
So on line 16, our article is going to have its class set to item. Perfect. So
Okay.
if we check our code, we should
Yeah.
be okay.
And now I think, oh, that's what's happening here. So this French vanilla and the 3 is offset a little bit because by default, we got our French vanilla on one line. And then because it's a block element, boom,
Yeah.
3, oh, it's down on a separate line. It's separate block, really. Oh, this is hard. This is wild.
Ooh.
What's going on
So
here?
what we're going to do is notice there's no comma. We're going to target all of the P elements that are inside an item. So this isn't targeting the comma. If we were to put a comma in item comma P, this would target items and P's. But exactly. And it looks a little bit wonky now.
Ah!
However, however, what we're doing now is telling it, hey, target all P elements inside an item.
So here
So
it's
that's what the full
say,
space does.
go and look at the item class.
Yep.
And then these are rules only for the children of item, the P children of item.
Exactly.
Huh.
Looks good. It's closer, but the price doesn't stay over on the right. So now we need to worry about the width of these items. So right now the width of an item is only as much as needed. So what Jess is going to do here is say that the flavor is going to be 50% wide, and the price is also going to be 50% wide, and that way they're going to take up the full 100% in total. Well, that doesn't look right.
That doesn't look right. I know why that
But
doesn't look right.
oh,
You
good,
think
because
50
I
plus
don't.
50 is 100, don't you?
I would like
And
to
you think
think.
100% is the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not.
that's way too reasonable for programming, I bet. So
I
even though
did
this
not
looks
know this.
wrong, I got you. I
Yeah.
got you. And every now and again, you'll get a programming thing like in JavaScript, we'll learn about counting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this is going to be a little bit like counting. So it's like, oh, hey, in programming, you always start counting from 0. I say, why? I'd be like, just because. And I think this is going to
Yeah.
be a just because thing. That didn't work.
On separate
Styling the
lines of
P
code, it
elements as
creates.
inline blocks in the code creates an extra space. So they went for block
Oh.
elements and having their own space. But because they're now on the same line, there's an extra little tiny space. So
Oh my
here,
goodness.
it's like a secret ghost element. Choose the width value. So we're just going to go ahead and give it some little space for the ghost. And that looks just fine now.
Oh, look, Starlight says 100% would be outside the parent element.
Amazing. So we're going to go ahead,
Yeah.
49 plus 40. It's close enough to 100% where it feels right. And
Looks
is that going
great.
to be a theme in CSS a lot? To be like, oh, vibes. It feels right.
Yeah. Oh, but there's still a little space on the right. You could keep trying various percentages. Instead, we're going to use the backspace key to move the P element with the price P.
Ah. So
Oh my goodness.
here, there's
Okay.
a space
Yeah.
because they're on different lines. But what if they weren't on different
Oh,
lines?
that did move it a little bit.
It did move it.
So,
So hang on. Boop, boop.
yeah.
And we see an almost
Oh,
imperceptible move back and forth.
so that's because we're by having this line, this new line, um,
The
ah,
enter is another sort of conceptual character. It gives us a teeny tiny baby rectangle if we're going to follow my intense rectangle theory. So we could turn these back to 50% now that we don't have that space taking up room in the middle.
amazing.
Boop, and that goes all the way. I personally would like a little bit more padding, which I'm sure you'll get to learn about on your own.
Ooh,
Because
yeah.
like this comes right out. This is a little hard to read for me. So we're going to change the remaining article and P elements to match the first set. Okay.
So now we're going to add all of the rest of our classes.
I'm gonna be kind of sassy. I'm not gonna do this. This is really good for muscle memory,
Yeah.
but I think the learners can do this on their own. So say, hey, we're gonna add the classes just like it looks up here to the rest of these items. And I will personally be skipping it.
So now that we've done it, oh yeah, and it's applied everywhere. Fantastic. So,
So we've got the same problem with these. Next, position the other P elements to be on the same line with no space between them. Again, I'm not going to do this. We've shown you how to do it once. I'm going to continue to be mean. And we might just go ahead and talk our way through the rest of these. So, ha ha. This one's another one to say, hey, add the
mhm.
class names to each flavor and to each price. And I love when you were the person driving, you were like, oh, of course I'll type it out. And now that I'm driving, I say, no, 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 no. So we've added the flavor and the price class to the other P elements. And now I will cruelly and monstrously insist you do it on your own. Okay. If we make the width of the page preview smaller, we'll notice at some point the text on the left starts wrapping around to the next line. And this is because the width of the P elements on the left side can only take up half the space.
Hmm.
Let's look at what that feels like. Oh, I see. Oh,
Oh.
because they've got like a 50-50 line.
So what we're doing here is like taking into account the fact that the prices will always be narrower. So we'll go with flavor having 75% width and the price having 75. That still adds up to 100, but we're assigning more space to the price, to the flavor.
Okay, so it still does
Oh, that
wrap
looks
when it gets
much
way
better.
too close, but it wraps in a
On a
much more
smaller screen,
reasonable
it'll
way.
look better.
Yeah. We check our
Nice.
code.
Amazing.
Everything's fine. So, do you, nope, nope, nope. I am going to call it and say, let's go ahead and wrap it up because this is going to feel really similar to what we just did. And
Cool.
because I am the mean teacher, I think it's really
You're the
important for folks
best.
to get a little bit of, hey, we've done this together. Now let's do something that feels really similar, but on your own.
Mhm.
And since I've been mean
Shall
this
we?
whole day, oh, please. I
I
was going
was
to
just
make
gonna
you
say,
be
like,
mean.
shall we? Oh, okay. Yes, I'll do the mean thing. Shall we go back and look at the rest of the steps? Could you click on Learn Basic CSS by building a cafe menu, I think?
Yeah.
Let's take a look at what we've got left. So we've done
Oh,
about half of these. So I'm gonna be the mean one and ask that. And again, like the homework for
homework,
tomorrow.
homework. I love the way
The
you're so
homework?
gentle where you're like, "Oh, you if you don't mind, could you do some?" And I'm just like, "Ha ha ha, they have homework." We have homework too. We
Yes,
have yeah.
I know. You're right. So the homework is gonna be to do the rest of these steps. Remember, if you get stuck on anything, we've got the Discord. Let me bring that link up again.
And if you
But
don't
you
get
can
this finished by the time we do the class tomorrow, do we kick you out? Do we yell at
oh, hold on.
you? No, no, no. Nothing bad happens.
Exactly.
So yeah, the whole point of this boot camp is this is just some additional support for getting through the free code camp curricula. If you need to finish up on the weekend, that's fine. If you need to finish up next month, that's fine. If you want to come back next year and learn with us, heck yeah. As much
There's
like
no time limit.
if it's useful to have a deadline and to have some pressure, you can absolutely pretend I'll yell at you. But oh, I'm going to give
Let's
bonus homework.
oh,
So you, as the mean teacher in this example, have said, "Oh, please try and finish this section if you can." And my homework
mhm.
is going to be the same homework as always. So while you're learning this, please, please, please be as soft to yourself as possible. We've been bopping
Absolutely.
through this, but CSS is kind of stressful, right? It's new.
It's it's new and like these are all things that are when they're new, they're gonna seem strange and stressful, but they'll get better with time. Before we let you all go, do we wanna go back to those questions we've been getting? I'd
Oh,
love to
yeah, we
answer
had
some
some
of them.
really good questions.
Let's take a look at this one. Would you recommend
Oh,
using all caps in HTML as this project directs us for the H1 Camper Cafe, or would it be actually be better practice to style that via CSS ultimately? So the question
okay.
here
So
relates to the H1, right? Which was written in all caps.
let me find it.
And the
Let me find
yeah,
myself. Got very deep. So this Camper Cafe is all caps.
yeah,
And I think to make sense of this question, we have to explain that we can actually use a CSS transform property to change something. We could change it into all uppercase or all lowercase.
yeah.
Um,
Uppercase MDN. Let me look that up real
we're
quick.
looking, I'm
Text
not sure
transform.
about best practices. Is it transform? It's transform, isn't it?
It's text transform.
Text transform.
I'm gonna link
So
it
we
in there.
haven't learned it yet, but there's a way to change things to uppercase or lowercase or camel case. We'll learn about them, I promise. Um, I
Yeah.
don't know if there's a best practice associated with this. I think that for a screen reader user, all caps might be annoying.
Yeah, because you know how it reads it? It goes capital C, capital A, capital M, capital P, capital E, capital R, and it's just like it's also like when you post on social media with a lot of like emojis in it, each of those emojis gets read out. So it's
Uh,
good to be conscious of those things.
Eric's got
Ah,
my back.
Eric,
Text transform uppercase would let you write
magnificent,
Camper Cafe in lowercase or whatever case you like, and then it would make it appear visually to be uppercase. And
amazing.
I very rarely quote the British government, but they've got some really good accessibility guidelines. And here's some about
Ooh,
publishing accessible documents. And it says, hey, go easy on those all caps.
yeah,
So where
good to
am
know.
I? Where are you? Where are you? Who I'm so sorry, my love. You asked this really good question. I was answering it and I want to give you
Oh,
credit
I've
for
got
just
it here.
do you who was that?
This one, right? About ID instead of class for
Oh,
elements.
nope. So that's really, really good. But who
Oh,
was it who
sorry.
asked this really good one about is it best practices to write in all caps? Steve,
Oh, this one.
very familiar, just Steve.
My bad.
Stephen B is saying, hey, is it best practices to write this in all caps? And it looks like based on some accessibility guidelines, and we'll learn about accessibility, I promise. And this is saying, I don't think we should use all caps. Stephen B, I believe you're correct that we would not consider it a best practice to write this in all caps. We should change it with CSS.
Mhm. So, here's our next question. What happens if you only use ID instead of class for elements? Are they interchangeable? Yeah. As we saw here, they're not. So again, an ID is unique for one element, and a class can be applied to many of them.
So
Ah, this question from Pramod,
it's so
sorry.
good. This is such a cursed question. Uh, so, what text align center is doing And what margin left and right are doing are different, but they can have the same visual effect.
Mhm.
So what text align is doing is it says, "Hey, this text," sound, "please align this text in one direction." And what margin is doing is say, "Hey, give me a margin, push this left or right or auto." So here we've got an example, and you'll see a lot of these in CSS where you can have the same visual effect by using different properties. So they have the same visual effect, but mechanically, if we think of this as a rectangle moving machine, the way these rectangles get to the visual effect they are, one of them is by pulling the text into alignment, and one of them is by pushing, adding a margin that pushes the content, pushes the text around. Um,
I love
so the
that.
answer to
Yeah.
your question is yes, but no.
And I think the other thing as well is that the margin left, margin auto, we applied it to a non-text element.
Oh, no, you're correct. So we can really think about margin as moving the space around our element.
Yeah.
And we can think of text as moving the content of that, the text content. Do folks have any other questions? And don't forget, you could ask us questions in Discord. You can ask them on the forum. Everything's fine. If not, you've got your homework. I'm going to go ahead and just verify folks
Oh, I
in.
just did it.
Oh, we're racing. In that case, can I give you some homework?
Me?
Yeah. You've got to
Oh, yeah.
log off and rest up. I won't
Oh,
see you tomorrow because tomorrow we decided that we're only going to have the nice teacher for one session. So only you.
no, no, we're having me.
Yeah. And then on Thursday, you get double meanness where it's only me. Wahahaha. I
It'll be
will
wonderful.
say goodbye to all of you. Thank you so much. You've been a joy to learn with.
Bye, everyone. Take care.